The dawn light on Solera Prime was a muted lavender, filtered through the planet's dense, ozone-rich atmosphere. From orbit, the world looked like a marble held in cosmic velvetits, continents etched in swirling jade and russet. But from the spired towers of the imperial capital, Solara City, that beauty was marred by the stench of fear. Senatorial debates erupted in hushed corridors. Private militias drilled behind closed gates, and rumors of rebellion flickered like distant wildfire. High above the thrumming streets, the celestial throne chamber lay at the heart of the citadel. Its walls were veined with living crystal that pulsed gently, an organic interface for the Empire's vast holographic network. Empress Marielle Valentina stood before the central projection, a three-dimensional star map of the Galactic Empire. 7 systems burned in crimson, markers of secession, of open revolt. 3 of those had been forcibly retaken, but the sheen of victory was tainted by staggering casualties and the whimper of demoralized troops. Marielle's dark hair was gathered in a regent's braid, silver ornaments glinting at her temples. Behind her, the glass canopy of the chamber framed the pale sun of Solera Prime, its glare subdued by protective filters. The murmurs of her council advisors echoed in the marble-lined hall. Lord Consul Eden Rose, a scholar marshal whose angular features bespoke both intellect and ruthless pragmatism, tapped at the map's surface. Scanning the outer rim sectors, he spoke, voice measured but urgent. The Drethian coalition has dispatched arms shipments to 37 rebel cells. In the outer sectors, plasma rifles, photon grenades, even repurposed warbeam controllers. Their goal is destabilization, to fracture our supplies and distract our fleets. Meanwhile, the Senate grows restless. They demand a show of force. But every fleet engagement we order costs lives we can't spare. He paused, steepling his fingers. If we do nothing, the rot spreads. If we commit the full navy, we risk a mutiny over resource exhaustion. Marielle inhaled slowly, her gaze fixed on the shifting reds. The Drethian hand reveals itself. She murmured, "They wish to bleed the Empire dry, claim our systems once our defenses collapse." Her voice grew firmer, and yet, she turned, eyes glinting with resolve. "We have one advantage, humanity's spirit. Our fleet, no matter its current condition, still carries the legacy of the great unification wars. Admiral Graves owes me that legacy." At the far end of the chamber, a door hissed open. Admiral Helena Graves entered, her presence commanding despite the absence of an elaborate uniform. Her jacket was cut from the traditional obsidian tunic, its seams reinforced for practicality rather than ceremony. Soot smudges and repair patches bespoke recent action. She paused at the threshold, head bowed in deference, then advanced in measured steps. The Empress inclined her head. "Admiral, I trust word of the Council's unrest has reached you." "Your Majesty," Helena replied, voice low but unwavering. "My informants report escalating insurrections in the Helion Spur and the Vespera sectors. The regular celestial fleet is engaged on 3 fronts, and I estimate operational strength at no more than 40% of nominal capacity." A thin smile touched Marielle's lips, rare for her. "Then I shall ask the impossible. You will marshal the main human fleet. You will bring discipline to the outer sectors, secure the Cherulian Gate, and demonstrate the reach of imperial will. Rally system governors under our banner, and if they refuse," her tone sharpened, "enforce compliance." Helena straightened. "I accept, Your Majesty, but I must be blunt. The main human fleet is more name than force. Dozens of our ships languish in shipyards across 40 systems awaiting repair, cannibalized for parts or simply abandoned. Crews are scattered. Officers are on leave or seconded to civilian governments. My captains would welcome the order, but they lack the means." Marielle's silver eyes hardened. "Then make them." She gestured. The hologram zoomed in on the Corward sector. "Lord Rose will release additional requisitions from the reserve vaults. You will have 3 days to muster your captains on the pride of humanity in orbit of Solara City. Show the Senate and the people that we are not broken. Show the galaxy that the Empress commands not just star lanes, but hearts." Helena bowed. "By your leave." She turned and departed, her boots clicking on the crystalline floor. As the door sealed, marauding data streams surfaced in the projection, encrypted messages humming beneath the map. Lord Rose frowned. tracing a red thread that snaked from rural agrarian worlds to outer mining colonies. "You may have overreached, Your Majesty. If the fleet fails, I will not fail," Mariel interjected, voice soft but resolute. "For the Empire to endure, we must remind it what unity looks like." She raised a hand, and the hologram shattered into glittering motes outside the chamber. Solara City's skyways thrummed with traffic, freighters laden with grain, patrol corvettes slicing through cloud banks, and a lone freighter carrying clandestine rebel sympathizers. The fractures of power ran deep, and the coming days would test the very soul of humanity's dominion. Solara City, 4th Avenue District beneath the Imperial Heights. The 4th Avenue District was a labyrinth of neon-lit aisles and shadowed alleys. Market stalls hawked everything from steam-baked pastries to illicit comjammers. Street urchins darted between hover ships, clutching holo crystals destined for the black market exchanges. Here, loyalty to the Empire was a distant slogan. Each day demanded new alliances, new defenses. Lieutenant Mara Kett watched from a second-story balcony. As a communications officer for the human militia, she had seen too many messages distorted by propaganda. Her fingers hovered over a battered datapad. A tip had arrived. An unregistered freighter, Cassandra's Smile, carried high-grade armaments bound for the Outer Rim rebels. If true, this could shift momentum. If she shared it, the militia brass might intercept the shipment. If she remained silent, she'd be betraying the Empire. The weight of that choice pressed on her chest. Below, a riot broke out near the Fenton Bazaar. A patrol drone collapsed in sparks, its AI core siphoned by scavengers. Mara exhaled. Solara City was a microcosm of the Empire's turmoil, each spark of discontent threatening to ignite an inferno. She tucked the datapad into her jacket and melted back into the crowds, determined to see what and whom she could trust. The Celestial Archive. In the vaulted halls of the Celestial Archive, where trillions of data cores lay ensconced in climate-controlled chambers, Archivist Dorian Celine studied an ancient manuscript, the Treaty of Zagros, which once united humanity's warring factions under a single banner. As she traced the faded ink, her heart clenched. The peace it promised had shattered generations ago. Now, the Empire splintered again. A soft chime echoed. A security droid rolled to attention. "Archivist Celine," it intoned, "you are requested." In the throne chamber, Dorian nodded, sealing the manuscript in a protective case. She wondered what knowledge the Empress sought, history repeating itself, or lessons unheeded. Nightfall. Aproh's Solera Prime's twin moons climbed into the rose-streaked sky. A hush fell over the citadel. From the summit spires, the Empress gazed across the luminous cityscape, lights twinkling like collected stars. Beside her, Admiral Graves checked the clasp on her utility belt, a holstered sidearm and a sealed data holo containing the muster orders. "Tomorrow," Helena said softly, "we'll gather what remains of the main human fleet. Then we move on the Cherulian Gate." Mariel placed a hand on her shoulder. "Then we remind the galaxy why humanity once reached for the stars and why it must reach again." Below, the first troop transports shuddered to life in orbit. Somewhere in the Outer Rim, rebel drums beat in answer. The Empire was fracturing, but tomorrow, the main human fleet would rise scarred, under-resourced, but unbroken. The twilight deepened, and the Citadel's crystals glowed in anticipation, waiting for the dawn of a new campaign. And so the game began. The Caraxes Nebula stretched around them like a living thing, roiling in violet and emerald gas clouds that glowed eerily against the black of space. Within the shifting haze, the ragged remnants of the main human fleet gathered. Battered corvettes drifted alongside jury-rigged transports, and a scattering of frigates lay motionless in orbit of the abandoned mining station Aurora's Rest. Every hull bore hastily patched plating. Every gun battery looked as though it might seize at the first flare of battle. Captain Kalen Kai-Chen stood on the station's observation deck, watching the nebula's luminescence play across the viewport. He'd earned his command through hard lessons, losing friends, salvaging wrecks, trading favors with local warlords, yet nothing had prepared him for this. The Outer Rim had always been a distant frontier, safely beyond the Corps' concerns. Now it was the front line. Beside him, Lieutenant Surigel frowned at the tactical console. The screen flickered as she filtered through layers of jamming signals. "We've got pockets of rebel activity in 9 quadrants," she reported. "They're raiding supply convoys, mining stations striking at our weak points. And now they've taken Aurora's Rest." She gestured at the battered station. In the viewport, its signage flickering. Once a bustling hub, now a rebel stronghold. Kai nodded. "We can't let them hold it. The station controls local sensor buoys if they darken them. We lose our eyes in this sector." He turned, scanning the assembled captains whose ships formed a crescent around the station. "I know we're undercrewed and undergunned, but tonight, we remind the Outer Rim what the main human fleet still stands for." A hush fell over the officers as they absorbed the gravity of his words. 2. Gathering of captains. The docking bay of Aurora's Rest was cavernous and half-lit, the low hum of the station's skeletal support systems underscoring its abandonment. Captain Chen's boarding party of 200 Marines flowed through the bay's maw, weapons at the ready and calm mix whispering static. With them marched Colonel Voss, his crisp uniform a stark contrast to the weary grime of the station. "Colonel," Kai said, voice low, "I'm glad you pressed to come." Voss's reputation for no-nonsense tactics was well known. His presence would steady the Marines' jittery after months of guerrilla-style skirmishes. Voss nodded. "Discipline wins battles. Let's secure the ops center, cut their communications, and call in the fleet bombardment." He tapped his helmet's visor, shifting his view to the station's schematics. "We've got to access points maintenance tunnel to the west, civilian concourse to the east. I recommend a two-pronged assault." Kai agreed. "Joel, map us a secure path through the tunnel. Commander Zahiri, flank through the concourse with the second wave. I'll lead the main thrust." He met Zahiri's cool gaze. Her scarred visage belied a tactical genius forged in countless engagements. "Ready, always," she replied. Behind them, a hushed murmur rose among the Marines. They had expected easy targets, panic-stricken miners, perhaps a token security detail. But the rebels had fortified the station, rigging corridors. With pulse mines and ambush points, the Outer Rim fighters had become savvier, emboldened by clandestine Drethian support. 3. The first breach be the time the boarding party reached the western maintenance tunnel. The hum of the station seemed to pulse with tension. Flickering hazard lights cast long shadows as Kai's Marines pressed forward, phalanx style. Suddenly, a sharp crack echoed. A plasma turret sprung to life. "Ambush," shouted Sergeant Miles, diving for cover as a red bolt sizzled overhead. The corridor ignited in a staccato of blue fire. Kai pressed himself against the wall, signaling his team to return fire. The air filled with the smell of burnt insulation and the stench of ozone. Moments later, after clearing the turret's emplacement, they advanced into a cross-junction where rebel fighters had assembled. Glass shattered as grenades rolled along the deck plates. Kai tossed himself to one side, training his rifle on a crouched rebel behind an upturned crate. "Don't move," he barked, dropping the fighter in a single shot. Round him, his Marines seized control of the junction, wrestling the remaining rebels into surrender. The fray was brief, but bloody. The station's skeleton defenses no match for disciplined soldiers. Kai exhaled, already moving deeper. "Voss, we've got control of the west tunnel. Proceed." "Affirmative," the colonel's voice crackled in Kai's calm. "Concourse team, for flames in the concourse," the civilian concourse. Commander Zahiri's squad advanced with silent precision. They slipped through broken storefronts, past shattered holoed panels, flickering fragmented advertisements. A sudden burst of rifle fire shattered a bulkhead, and Zahiri dove behind a support pillar. "They're using hit-and-run tactics," she muttered, raising her plasma carbine. She fired a single shot at the shadowy form of a rebel sniper. The figure collapsed, and Zahiri sprinted forward, rallying her Marines. As they pressed through the concourse, they encountered locked blast doors rigged with pressure mines. Zahiri signaled to her demolitions expert, Private Ferris, who moved in to disarm the device. A bead of sweat traced down his cheek. "Almost there. Got it," Ferris announced as he lifted the mine's containment. An explosion boomed down the hallway, echoing through the station, but the device was safe. Zahiri allowed herself a grim smile. "Let's keep moving." 5. Heart of the station. Deep in the station's core, Colonel Voss and his detachment reached. The ops center, an octagonal chamber ringed with holo consoles and blinking sensor rays. A handful of rebel officers scrambled to nearby terminals, attempting to reroute station controls. "Freeze!" Voss yelled, his tone brooking no argument. The rebels dropped their weapons. Raising their hands, Voss strode forward, cuffing the lead officer. "Tell me who's in charge here." He pressed a damp cloth to his forehead as the station's recycled air carried the acrid tang of spent ammunition. Drethian contact. The captive snarled. They promised liberation, promised freedom. Voss studied him. They offered death. He turned to the console, tapping commands that shut down external jamming and restored the fleet's sensor feeds. "Marines, secure all comm channels and ready the uplink. We're calling in orbital fire." 6. The turning tide back on the station's surface. Captain Chen watched as the constellation of human ships loosed their payloads. Ion cannon volleys tore through the nebulous haze. Laser beams carved traceries of light against the station's hull, and missiles streaked in scarlet arcs before detonating in fireballs that illuminated the nebula. The rebel batteries retaliated, launching drones and corroded missile pods. A frigate of Chen's line listed, its starboard engines sputtering under assault. Kai keyed his comm. "All units, focus fire on the eastern battery. Zahiri status concourse secure." Her voice crackled. "Ops center under guard. You're clear to neutralize the main guns on it," Chen replied. He led a small contingent to the battery bunker, leaping over molten metal pools and clambering through blown open access hatches. Inside, he confronted a lone rebel technician frantically recalibrating targeting arrays. "Hands where I can see them," Kai ordered. Under intense pressure, the technician complied. Kai disabled the battery's power couplings, watching the colonnade of turrets sputter and died out outside. The barrage slackened. The fleet shifted from bombardment to boarding operations, deploying fighters and dropships that rained Marines onto the station's upper decks. The Outer Rim stronghold trembled under humanity's combined might. 7. A shadow moved Samad the Triumph. Kai noticed movement at the edge of his HUD display, a cloaked figure slipping through maintenance conduits, heading toward the station's reactor core. He signaled Sergeant Miles, and they pursued at a run. They found her near the core's cooling ducts, Lieutenant Nirasev, eyes wide with desperation. The comms officer known for her loyalty now cradled a data spike, her uniform stained with hydraulic fluid. "Drop it," Kai ordered. Sev staggered back. "You don't understand." Kai caught up, kicking the spike free. "You joined the rebels." Sev's shoulders slumped. "They said the Empire would leave the Rim to die. I wanted to protect my family." Before Kai could respond, alarms blared. The rebels had set a timed charge at the core's containment seals. The staccato trill of the safety countdown filled the corridor. "No time," Kai shouted, grabbing Sev's arm. "Help me disarm it." In a frantic blur, the two worked together, her technical skill and his steady hands halting the timer. With seconds to spare, Sev sagged in relief. I'm sorry." Kai looked at her, conflicted. "Today you saved us. Tomorrow you'll answer for your choices." 8. Sunrise over the Rimas. The first pale rays of Solara Prime's sun crusted distant gas clouds. The outer hull of Aurora's Rest lay silent. The rebels had surrendered or been captured. The station's lights blinked back to life under human control. Captain Chen surveyed the assembled fleet in orbit, a battered but undefeated constellation of ships. Lieutenant Jill joined him, exhaustion and pride etched on her features. "We did it." Kai nodded, shoulders heavy. "Yes, but this was only the first spark." He looked out into the nebula, where distant tracer fires still glowed like dying stars. "The Outer Rim will burn before it heals. We've bought time for the Empire, for ourselves, but the war has just begun." Behind them, the station's calm beacon flared, broadcasting a single message across secure channels. "Outer Rim secured. Main human fleet operational. Next objective, the Cerulean Gate." In that moment, even the nebula seemed to still an incandescent promise that, despite all odds, humanity's light would not be extinguished. In the endless void between Solara Prime and the Cerulean Gate, The main human fleet drifted like a wounded leviathan awakening from fevered dreams. Dozens of vessels, destroyers, frigates, corvettes, and transports had limped into orbit around the asteroid fortress Horatius Station, the designated rally point. Their hulls bore the scars of boarding actions, plasma burns, and jury-rigged repairs. Their pennants hung limp, frayed by countless slips through gravity wells. Admiral Helena Graves stood on the observation deck of her flagship, the HMS Pride of Humanity, watching as battered shuttles ferried crews, officers, and cargo. Between ships, below, the station's orbital tugs grappled with derelict hulls, towing them to makeshift docks. The acrid tang of welding sparks drifted up through the airlock vents, mingling with the cold, recycled atmosphere. Helena's aide, Ensign Marothi, approached with a datapad glowing in his gauntleted hands. "Admiral, we've accounted for 62 ships, repairs complete enough for limited operations, 58 combatants, and for hospital transports. Crew complements average at 65%. She nodded, absorbing the figures. "Better than feared, but still barely enough to hold a single battle line. What of supplies? Ordnance stocks at 40% capacity. Fuel and rations sufficient for standard jump cycles." Helena let out a soft sigh. "Tell Chief Engineer Solace to push power reroutes. Every available energy cell must go toward engines. And shields, weapons can run on secondary capacitors." She paused, meeting Marrow's eyes. "And sound the muster. Captains to the wardroom in 30 standard minutes." As the ensign saluted and departed, Helena drew in a steadying breath. The fleet's cohesion depended not just on steel and circuits, but on the fragile bonds between officers and their crews, bonds frayed by isolation, fear, and the perception that the Empire had abandoned them to rot in the rim. Tonight, she would remind every captain why they served. To the wardroom of broken dreams. The wardroom aboard the Pride of Humanity was a vaulted chamber of burnished metal and gleaming holo panels. A massive viewport offered a panorama of Horatius Station's jagged silhouette against the nebula's soft glow. As the 60-odd captains filtered in, their uniforms varied wildly, some immaculate, trimmed in gold braid, others patched and faded, the collars frayed from prolonged service. Captain Kalen Chen arrived with Commander Zahiri at his side, their presence a testament to recent victory at Aurora's Rest. Elsewhere, veteran captains bore scars of bygone campaigns. Lieutenant Commander Quel Moravik, one-eyed and stoic, who'd once led the blockade at the Soros Rift. Captain Amelia Varenne, whose light frigate, HMS Aurora, had been crucified by rebel mines and rebuilt from scrap. One by one, they took their seats round the central conference ring. Helena stood at the head, holo map of the route to Cerulean, gate hovering above the table. A hush fell as she initiated the briefing. "Captains," she began, voice firm. 3 days ago, Solara Prime teetered on the brink of collapse. Today, we stand here not as isolated ships, but as an armada ready to reclaim the Cerulean Gate." Her gaze swept the room. "The stakes are simple. Retake the gate, restore hyperspace access to the core, and force the Outer Rim rebels to kneel." Murmurs rippled, some nodded, others exchanged uncertain glances. Helena pressed on. "Our intel indicates the rebels have fortified the gate's control node with an array of orbital turrets, electronic jammers, and surface bunkers. They've contracted Drethian mercenaries, recruiters who know how to stretch a single plasma rifle into a battalion's worth of terror." She tapped the holo map. 3 projected fleet paths: Alpha, Bravo, and Charlie approaches calculated to split the rebel defenses. "We'll attack in 3 wings. Captain Chen will lead Alpha through the nebulous shadow lanes, cloaked by plasma storms. Captain Varenne on Bravo will feint a frontal assault to draw their focus. Captain Moravik on Charlie will strike from the gate's dark side, where their sensors blind spot." A hand rose. Captain Varenne spoke, voice tired but resolute. "Admiral, my frigate's shields are at 70%. We'll face point-blank barrages any breach, and we're dead in the void." Helena met her gaze. "Which is why we'll synchronize the Alpha salvo precisely. With Bravo's advanced vectors maximizing crossfire, you'll have ECM support from the HMS Echo's jammer pods. Use them." Another voice, quiet but intense, Commander Zahiri asked, "What of ground forces? We can't secure the node from orbit alone." "Correct," Helena replied. "I'll command the boarding group to breach the control station once the defenses fall. Drop ship deployment on my Mark 40 marine transports, each fully stocked. After that, we reinforce the local governor, reassert imperial authority, and establish a crow's nest fleet presence." Eyes shifted. The scale of the operation and the inherent risks settled like concrete. Helena closed the briefing. "We muster in for hours. Until then, prepare your crews physically and mentally. This is not a demonstration, this is war. Any questions?" Silence reigned. The captains filed out, determination mingled with dread. Only Quell Moravec lingered, leaning forward. "Admiral, my sensors detect an anomaly in the supply jettison channel's small data spikes. Being sent without authorization. Could be smugglers, could be intelligence leaks." Helena's jaw tightened. "Investigate discreetly. Report directly to me." As the wardroom emptied, she allowed herself a moment's pause. The web of conspiracies and desperation stretched too far. A single spark of betrayal could doom the mission, but she would root it out. She had to. 3. Corsair crescent darkness fell over Horatius Station as storm-charged clouds of ionic plasma swirled in the nebula. The fleet went to general quarters. Decks hummed with energy. Bulkheads sealed and turrets pivoted into firing. Arcs in the distance, the Cherulian Gate's dual rings pulsed faintly in open wound in space, unguarded yet fraught with peril. From the station's observation tower, Kai Chen watched through binocular-like optics. "Admiral," his comm clicked, "we're picking up a flotilla of pirate corsairs bearing Drethian sigils, 8 ships, inbound on a vector directly toward our rear guard." Helena's voice crackled in his ear. "Corsairs, that's a bold move. Are they acting as privateers?" "Privateers or decoys, I can't tell." "Understood." "Chen, engage them. Hold them off until Bravo opens the gate defenses. You have permission to use maximum yields." "Copy that." Kai turned to his executive officer, Lieutenant Chul, "Scrub cloaking sequences. Let's give them a welcome they won't forget." Moments later, the corridor of space behind the assembled fleet lit up in a volley of red tracer fire. Corsair frigates, nimble and suicidal, weaved through debris fields, cutting toward helpless transports. Kai's corvette, HMS Virtue, peeled off, engines flaring, to meet them head-on. On the bridge of the Virtue, alarms shrieked as missiles evaded point defense drones and punched through aft plating. Joel's fingers danced over her console, rerouting power to the aft shields. Shields at 20% overload imminent. Kai leaned forward. Evasive maneuvers, full port thrusters, deploy chaff and pulse mines. The Virtue shuddered. Under a direct hit, crewmen flinched at the tremor, but the smallest plasma shards danced harmlessly on the pulse mines' detonations. Kai ordered forward guns to bear, tearing into the Corsair vanguard. Explosions bloomed in the void, illuminating the nebula's clouds in ghostly orange flares. "Admiral," Joel reported, "our tactics are holding. Corsairs are faltering." "Good. Keep them off the transports. We can't lose a single drop ship." Across the line, HMS Aurora and HMS Echo unleashed coordinated barrages, laser net guns cutting enemy engines, jammer pods crippling targeting arrays. Step by step, the Corsair threat diminished, vessels broke formation, and the pirates retreated into plasma storms, nursing their wounded pride and damaged hulls. 4. Unmasking the traitor. With the Corsairs repelled, the fleet turned its full attention to the gate. Bravo and Alpha pulses of coordinated fire struck the orbital turrets, grinding them into molten slag. Below, the boarding ships prepared their Marines for insertion. Back aboard the Pride's CIC, Helena studied the sensor logs. The anomalous data spikes Moravec had reported glowed like breadcrumbs, originating from her own flagship secure uplink. Blood drained from her face. "Morrow," she whispered into her comm, "lock down the uplink channels. Trace the source of those spikes." "Aye, Admiral." Within moments, the tracer revealed the impossible. The pride of humanity itself was leaking encrypted packet sorters being siphoned to an unknown receiver near the gate. Helena's mind reeled. A traitor in her own crew. She summoned Commander Zahiri to the CIC. Someone on this ship is feeding intelligence to the rebels. Before we launch the boarding teams, I need that leak sealed. No one boards until we know who." Zahiri's eyes narrowed. "We'll sweep the brig and security logs. I'll have a list of suspects in minutes." Helena closed her eyes, steeling herself. The tide of battle turned on moments like these. A single act of perfidy could trigger ambushes, decimate boarding teams, and doom the campaign. As the Marines armed themselves for deployment, the CIC flickered sensors pinpointing a hidden transceiver beneath the lower deck. Zahiri led a security squad through the twisting corridors, stunners drawn. The traitor Lieutenant Sev, the comms officer from Rora's Rest, stood at the core of the contraption, sweat beading on her brow. "Sev," Zahiri barked, "hands where I can see them." Sev's shoulders slumped. I did it to protect my family on the rim. I thought if I gave them intel, they'd stay away." Zahiri's expression softened momentarily, but duty overrode compassion. "Your lies almost cost us everything. You'll face the Empress's justice once this mission ends." As Sev was escorted away in restraints, Helena returned to the bridge. The jammers fell silent. The fleet's comms cleared. In that charged silence, she told her officers, "Launch the boarding groups. The control node is ours." 5. The beacon of resolve onto the shattered remnants of rebel fortifications. Marine transports streaked toward the gate's central hub. Ion thrusters flared as boarding ramps extended. Helena watched from the Pride's observation deck. Heart pounding. "Go," she whispered both to her Marines and to herself. As the first platoon landed on the control platform, Zephyr class fighters strafed rebel positions, and precision orbital fire carved access corridors through the domed shields. On the comm consoles, the data spikes ceased. The traitors' network lay in ruins. In the CIC, Ensign Marothi reported, "Node defenses collapsing. Surface team securing the generator banks." Helena exhaled, raising her voice so all on the bridge could hear. "Today, we reclaim the Cerulean Gate. Today, we remind the galaxy that even fractured steel can be reforged. Today, we stand as one human fleet." Below, the boarding teams breached the central chamber. With a final surge, they wrested control panels from trembling hands. The gate's dual rings quivered, then realigned, their pulsations growing steadier. Across the silence of space, the Cerulean Gate shone like a newly lit beacon, an open invitation for humanity's fleets to surge home. And at that moment, Admiral Helena Graves knew that though the Empire still trembled, its heart beat once more in the unity of its soldiers, sailors, and Marines, all bound by a single purpose: to reclaim the stars. The Cerulean Gate's twin arcs hummed with renewed power, each pulse sending ripples of iridescent energy radiating into the void. From the bridge of the HMS Pride of Humanity, Admiral Helena Graves watched the hyperspace corridor stabilize. Behind her, the boarding teams relayed victory reports, major defensive bunkers neutralized, the control nexus secured, and the gate's primary power cores back under Imperial command. Captain Kalen Shen's voice crackled over the comm. "Admiral, the outer rim flotillas have broken formation and are retreating. They've lost their nerve without their PSYOPs jammers guiding them." Helena inclined her head. "Maintain pursuit vectors, but hold fire. Let them know mercy exists alongside strength." She keyed her console. "All ships, stand down offensive operations. Open comm channels for surrender." Moments later, hundreds of rebel craft drifted into the gate's gravitational well, weapons offline. Crews white-faced with defeat. Marine boarding squads prepared to receive them, ensuring humane treatment as agreed under Imperial codes. As the flotillas limped towards surrender, the gate's rings shuddered once, then locked in perfect resonance. A low hum filled the bridge, vibrating through every console and plating. Helena felt the familiar tug at her spine, the beckoning of hyperspace made real. "Admiral," Ensign Marothi reported, "hyperspace window open, traffic lanes clear." A hush fell. Then Helena raised her voice so all on deck could hear. "This moment, this gate stands as proof that even the farthest stars belong to humanity. Today, we shine as one. Prepare for transit home." The bridge erupted in cheers, fists raised, voices hoarse with relief. Outside the viewport, the Cerulean Gate glowed. a newly ignited beacon guiding the fleet back to the core worlds. 2. Reckoning. Among the ruins within the gate's lower docking ring, rebel leaders once emboldened by Drethian promises awaited imperial justice. Among them, Governor Silena Chevrus of Helion Minor stood defiant as Marine officers read her charges: treason, sedition, and collaboration with hostile foreign powers. Helena stepped from the boarding lift, her uniform pristine amid the chaos of shattered weapons, racks, and patched hull breaches. Chevrus glared at her. "You've won this day, Admiral Graves, but the outer rim will rise again." "Perhaps," Helena replied, voice calm. "But today, you chose rebellion. Tomorrow, you'll answer for your actions. The Empress's mercy is as real as her wrath, remember that." As Chevrus was led away in magnetic restraints, Kai Chen arrived with Colonel Voss and Commander Zahiri. Their victory at Aurora's Rest had been the turning point. Now they watched the gate's arcs pulse once more. Chen nodded to Helena. "The rim's uprisings are crumbling. We've secured the major rebel garrisons and re-established supply lines. The hope we carried here has become the reality they needed." Helena placed a hand on his shoulder. "You and your crews earned every victory. But this is only the first step. The Drethian coalition still lurks beyond the outer rim's edge." Voss's gaze hardened. "Then we pursue them, push into the fringe systems, sever their roots, and show them that no one undermines the Empire with impunity." Helena smiled dry, determined. "Agreed. Launch reserves, we ride the momentum." 3. The Empress's Dominion weeks later. As the pride of humanity and its escort fleet emerged from hyperspace above Solera Prime, the vision awaiting them was both familiar and transformed. Solara City's spires gleamed under twin suns. Banners bearing the celestial eagle fluttered along every boulevard. Citizens lined the approach lanes, cheering as Marines and sailors disembarked onto the Citadel's grand esplanade. Empress Marielle Valentina stood at the base of the Celestial Throne's staircase, flanked by Lord Consul Edenrose. Her dress of woven argent silk glinted like starlight, and her dark hair was set with sapphire combs echoing the gate's glow. As Helena approached, the Empress inclined her head in genuine admiration. "Admiral Graves," Marielle proclaimed, voice carrying over the assembled multitude, "you have reminded the Empire of its purpose: unity through strength, mercy through justice, and above all, hope through action." The crowd erupted. Helena bowed. "Your Majesty, the fleet stands ready for new orders." Marielle's gaze swept across the officers at Helena's side. Chen, Voss, Zahiri, and returned to Helena. "Then hear this decree. The main human fleet is hereby reconstituted as the Corward Armada. Under Admiral Graves's command, it shall patrol the rim, secure the gateways, and enforce the peace we have fought so dearly to reclaim." Applause thundered. Helena's chest swelled with pride, but her eyes remained on the Empress. "With your leave, I will not only secure the outer rim, but strike at the root of Drethian interference." Marielle's silver eyes gleamed. "Go, then. With the Empire's blessing and the knowledge that your efforts light the way for all humanity." 4. New frontiers, new trial-swithen days. The Corward Armada slipped through the rejuvenated Cerulean Gate, weaving in and out of hyperspace lanes, re-establishing imperial garrisons, and distributing relief to war-torn colonies. Captain Kalen Chen's corvettes guarded vital supply convoys. Commander Zahiri's task force hunted down remaining Drethian warbeams. Colonel Voss's battalions trained local militias, under imperial doctrine. In the corridors of the Empresses High Council, dossiers piled high, reports of Drethian retreats, intelligence on secret insurgent networks, and the broken morale of once staunch rebel leaders. Archivist Dorian Celine's insights into the Treaty of Zagros were republished to guide reconciliation efforts, even as war crime tribunals convened for the most egregious offenders. Yet beyond these triumphs, a subtle undercurrent stirred. Reports arrived of Drethian scientists probing ancient hypernet ruins deep in the outer fringe, of unregistered war beams appearing in the Stygia expanse, of mercenary captains whispering to each other in forbidden tongues. The war was not over. It had only shifted shape. One evening, as dusk fell over Horatius Station, now converted into the fleet's forward logistics hub, Helena stood on an observation platform. The nebula's clouds glowed in midnight hues beneath a scattering of new transport docks and repair pylons. By her side, Nirasev, pardoned for her crucial aid in disarming Aurora's Rest, had become a liaison officer for captured rebel crews, guiding them back to Imperial service. Sev glanced at Helena. Is it always like this? Victory one moment, new threats the next. Helena offered a half smile. In space, the line between triumph and trial is always thin. But it's those trials that test the mettle of a fleet. And so far, ours has shone bright. From the shadowed rail behind them, Kai Chen approached. Admiral, we've intercepted a transmission from Drethian Command. They're mustering a counter-strike at the Varos Nebula. They think the Empire is weakened. Helena's eyes ignited. Then we show them how very wrong they are. She turned back to the swirling gas clouds. We've reclaimed our gateways. We've reformed our fleets. Now, we bring the fight to them. Above the station, the stars wheeled in silent testimony. An empire reborn from chaos. Its future uncharted, but guided by the steady light of those who dared to stand. In that vast expanse, the Cherulian Gate would remain a beacon not just of passage, but of hope. And as the Corward Armada prepared to launch into the next theater, Admiral Helena Graves knew that unity like light itself could travel any distance. Piercing the deepest darkness, the Empire had been tested, nearly shattered, but from the crucible of war emerged a humanity more resolute, more connected, and more determined than ever to conquer the unknown.